Bullying is what we grew up with in the 80s and 90s, people still do it today. Obviously, you'll never completely get rid of it, but it was where people would just pick on people for no reason. Now, that's not an approach that helps anyone. It hurts the person being bullied, but it also hurts the bully too, because there's a lot of times where bullies grow up and they feel so guilty for the way that they treated other people that it eats at them, and it ends up negatively impacting their lives. They typically, end up having hard times in certain things, in relationships with people, maybe their career life or whatever, because they live with that guilt. Bullying is never a good thing. Bullying typically comes from people who were taught that that's how you treat people. It's usually by somebody that is close to them that's supposed to love them, typically their father or their mother, but usually the father. You've heard the story 1,000 times. It's the typical story of a kid is the bully in school, and you just think he's a jerk, but then it turns out you find out his father's beating him or verbally abusing him, and that's why he has become a bully, because that's how he's learned you treat people. And with that scenario, the bully typically hates their father in this situation, and then hates themselves because they lack self-esteem, and then hates the person that they're bullying because they're usually envious of them for maybe not being bullied at home, maybe not having that type of negative influence in their life. So they decide to give it to that person because they're jealous of them. That type of behavior doesn't benefit anybody. On the other hand, aggressive accountability is the way we used to do things growing up with your friends. You would rib on each other, make fun of each other, but do it in a way where it wasn't malicious. You weren't trying to hurt that person. You were just having a good time and holding that person accountable for their deficiencies and helping them ensure that they don't become a hypocrite, but also keeping them in line with societal norms. Now, let's break that down. A couple of guys are hanging out in high school, and one guy decides to, dye his hair blonde. Now, this is not, at any particular time where it's socially accepted to be dyed blonde, or frosted tips or something silly like that. The group of men that's friends with him is going to make fun of him because they see how ridiculous it is, and they want him to admit that it's ridiculous too, and not act like it's totally normal to do that. So they're holding him accountable. Now, the person that's getting made fun of, they have a couple of choices. They could either acknowledge that it's weird what they're doing and change their ways to fit in with the pack, or they could steer into the skid and accept the jokes, accept the ribbing, and continue to do what they're doing because they choose to do that in confidence. Either way, it builds character. Do you actually believe in what you're doing,